Hello, Key Stage 2, and welcome to our Key Stage 2 assembly for today. I hope you've had a wonderful week so far. I hope you've managed to do lots and lots of amazing learning at home, and I hope you've managed to send some of it into your teachers. I know I've spoken to Mr. Venton, Mr. Arnold, Miss South, and I've seen lots of learning myself. I've been really impressed with what's being sent in to each of the teachers. So please keep that going. Please keep working hard. I know it is difficult at home, but do the best that you can do. And let's get started on our assembly today. And I'm going to share my screen so we can have a look through it together and work through it together. So our assembly today is on individual liberty. I wonder if you have any idea what that means. Maybe have a little think now, and we're going to work through it together. Before I tell you what it means, I'm going to give you some school rules. And I want you to imagine these are real school rules. And think about how you would feel about these if we were to put them in place at Greenwich. So number one, your teacher will tell you who you can be friends with. So you don't get to choose, the teacher tells you who you are friends with. Number two, you are not allowed to talk about football at school to anyone at all. So you can't talk about football with your friends, you can't talk about football with your teachers, you can't talk about football to anyone. You are only allowed to have green apples in your snack box. You're not allowed red apples, you have to have green apples. You are only allowed to read books by Enid Blyton. So you're not allowed to read any other books at all, apart from those by Enid Blyton. And you are not allowed to smile at school, that is banned. How would you feel about those rules? I imagine a lot of you would be feeling a little bit aggrieved by those, a little bit upset, maybe a little bit annoyed. Fortunately, these aren't going to be our real school rules. They're just an example of school rules, and I wanted you to think about how they would make you feel. Now, these link to individual liberty. And if we, as a school, set these rules, we'd be taking away your individual liberty. And maybe that gives you a bit of a clue about what individual liberty means. Have a think about that again a bit more. So let's have a look at that together. What is individual liberty? Liberty means being free from oppression or restrictions by the government or power. Now that sounds very confusing, but it means you have a degree of freedom in your life to choose to do what you want to do and to choose to behave in different ways. And that means that, for example, going back to those rules, that we can't tell you who you're friends with and who you're not friends with. You get to choose that. We can't tell you not to talk about football at school. As long as you do it at an appropriate time, you can talk about football at school, people. You can choose to have green apples or red apples in your snack box. As long as it's a healthy snack, you're allowed to choose the snack that you want. You are allowed to read any books at school as well, as long as they're appropriate. And you're allowed to smile at school, obviously. So you have some freedoms in your life. And that's what individual liberty is. And these link to your rights. Individual liberty links to your rights. And all of us have rights. Rights to do things, rights to behave in certain ways. What do you think your rights are? And I know we've been sharing some of our rights in celebration assemblies recently. And we've been sharing a different right each week. So maybe you can have a think back to any that you can remember. I hope you managed to think of some. If not, let's look at some together. So your rights are, you have the freedom to have our own opinions, thoughts, belief, and religion. So that means that we don't all have to have the same thought. We don't all have to have the same opinion, and we definitely don't all have to have the same religion. And focusing specifically on that religion one, some of us might be Christian, some of us might be Buddhist, some of us might be Hindu, some of us might be Muslim, some of us might not have a religion at all. And that's okay. It's your right to have your own thoughts, your own opinions, and your own religion. Your rights, another one of your rights, is protection from discrimination. And discrimination is when we treat someone differently and unfairly based on an element of them. So it could be perhaps the colour of their skin, the colour of their hair, the colour of their eyes. If we were to treat someone differently regarding or because of those things, that would be discriminating against them. And we have a right to be protected from that. We shouldn't be subjected to discrimination in any form. We have a right to an education. So we have a right to go to school. I can't say that you cannot be educated in any way. Now, even at the moment when we can't go to school, you still have that right to that education, which is why we continue to provide our learning through YouTube and other ways. So you have that right to the education, and we as a school and schools across the country have to provide that in some way, shape or form. We have a right to be free from slavery. Slavery is when you're forced to do a job that you don't want to do, and you might do it for little pay and in very unpleasant conditions. And we have a right to be free from that. We're not allowed to keep slaves in Britain, and we have that right to be free from slavery across the United Kingdom. We have the right to respect your private life and family. So that links to your free time a little bit. You can choose your hobbies, you can choose what you do with your free time. As long as it's not breaking the law, you can pursue those hobbies. And we have the right to liberty and to be safe. Now, a lot of you are thinking, well, does that mean I can do anything I want to do then? That sounds great. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean quite that. So everyone has individual liberty, but this does not mean we can do exactly what we want all of the time. There are rules to follow to keep everyone safe. And if we go back a little bit, we have the right to be safe. And that's why we have to have rules, to keep everyone safe. And we must respect those rules. And it is important to follow advice from different people. So I've got some people below that we might follow advice from. I wonder if you can guess the pictures. Who or which role does each person do? Have a think. So let's look at this one. I wonder if you've guessed what this one is. This one is a parent. And a parent's role is to keep us safe, warm, healthy, and sheltered. And they might give us some rules to help with that. And we've got to follow those rules, which means we might not be able to do exactly what we want to do. You might have to go to bed at a certain time or something similar to that. But your parent, your carer, is giving you those rules to keep you safe, to keep you well, and to do the best for you. What about the next one? I wonder if you can guess who that is. Well done if you said that's a teacher. A teacher's role is to help us to learn, feel safe, and be the best that we can be. Now, again, you all know that at school we have different school rules, we have different class rules, and they're to help us with our learning, they're to help to keep us safe. And like it says here, they're to help us to be the best we can be. And again, we've got to follow those rules, which means we can't necessarily do exactly what we want, but we do have some freedom at school still. The next one is a doctor. A doctor keeps us well and gives us advice, which we should follow. Again, so when they give us advice, it's a bit like a rule that we should follow. And they're giving us this advice to keep us healthy, to keep us safe. And it links back to that rule, that right that we have again. And the last one, I'm sure most of you have managed to guess this one. It is a police officer, and they're there to maintain law and order. And again, that links to safety. You see a lot of these actually link to that right to liberty and safety. Have a think about this. Individual liberty does not mean you are free to do what you want. It means you are free to do what's right. Do you agree with that? Do you not agree? What do you think? I think I do agree with that. I think it doesn't mean we can do exactly what we want. As we've discussed, there's rules that we have to follow. There's laws that are in place to keep us safe. But those laws, those rules do help us to make choices that are positive. They help us to make choices to do the right thing. So I think I agree with that. I wonder what you think. If you want to pause the video and have a bit of discussion about whether you agree or disagree, feel free to do so. Everyone's individual liberty. There may be times when we try to stop people having their individual liberty. Have a think about it. Maybe, is there ever a time where you've stopped someone from having a choice about something? Maybe you're a bit upset and you said something to someone you didn't really think about. You can't do that. You can't join in. You can't play this game. Have you ever said that to someone? Maybe when you've been feeling really upset, really angry. I'm sure we've all had moments like that. We've all had moments that we've regretted, where we might have blocked people's individual liberty and prevented it in some way. And that does happen sometimes, and we've got to realise that. But that's when also it links back to our value of forgiveness. If someone has done that to you, you might feel a bit upset if someone said, oh, you can't join in this game. But hopefully they'll realise that they've made a mistake. They'll hopefully recognise that they've prevented someone from having their individual liberty. Hopefully they'll apologise. And that's where we can show that value of forgiveness. And just as no one should stop our individual liberty, we should not prevent anyone else from having theirs. So what does that mean? This means we should be understanding of each other. We all know that we're all different. We all behave slightly differently. We all have different needs. We all have different interests, and that's okay. And that's what makes life interesting. So we should be understanding of each other and understanding of the differences between us. We should think of others rather than ourselves. So if you're playing a game at break time, for example, and you see someone who's looking a bit lonely and they ask to join in and you say, no, think about how that's going to make them feel. Instead, think about what you could do, perhaps to make their day more positive. What could you do to cheer them up? What could you do to make them feel included? And that's one way that we can help others have their individual liberty too. Try to see things from other people's points of view. So again, going back to that example, if you said no to someone, put yourself in their shoes. How would they be feeling, or how would you be feeling if someone had told you you can't play a game, you can't join in? I'm sure most of you would probably agree you'd feel a bit upset, a bit angry, something similar to that. And we should value everyone's opinions and input. So like we said before, we don't necessarily have the same opinion as everyone else. I know, for example, I love strawberries, but many of you might be saying, oh, I really hate strawberries. That's my opinion. You might have a different opinion, but you should value my opinion and I'll value your opinion. So have a little bit of time to reflect before we go away today. Think about a time maybe where you stopped someone from having their individual liberty. So did you do something that might upset someone? Did you do something that prevented someone from having a choice? Did you say sorry afterwards if you realized that you were wrong? And if you didn't, maybe you can make that better still. Maybe you could see that person or go to that person and say, I'm really sorry for that time that I did this. I didn't mean to upset you. I shouldn't have taken away your individual liberty. And it won't happen again. Something along those lines. Think about how they might have felt. Do you think it would have made them feel positively or maybe a bit more negative? Again, how could you make that better? And that links back to that first one. And think about how you could have behaved differently. What should you or what could you have done that would have helped that situation, that would have allowed that person to still have that individual liberty? So that is our assembly for today. I hope you've taken away something from that. I hope you've gained a bit of an understanding about what individual liberty is. And I hope that you respect each other's individual liberty going forward from now. Thank you very much for joining us at Key Stage 2. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you continue to have a wonderful week this week. And as I said before, we've really enjoyed seeing lots and lots of your amazing learning so far this week and last week. So please continue to work hard and continue to send in more of that as you complete it. Thanks, and see you next time. Bye.